Well, thank you everyone for joining in this evening with me. Normally, it's Prab who runs the show, and I'm really honored and delighted that he gave me an opportunity today to host the show where we have a person you would know him from for most of his certified cloud security professional study materials. He has provided a great and awesome preparation materials and a great question banks, and he is someone who is always known for speaking his mind. And in case if you follow him on the social networking sites, I do follow Ben closely, and I know how outspoken he is, right? And he actually not only speaks his mind, he also write down some of his thoughts in the form of his wonderful and awesome books. His most recent book that has actually created a buzz around it is about how eliminating privacy it can increase the trust and liberates humanity. So that's exposed. It's available on Amazon. So ladies and gentlemen, we have the man himself, Ben Malizal. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for joining us live.
Thank you, Prashant. And I love that you say he always speaks his mind. That's like a nice way of saying he's an obnoxious jerk. And I've been called worse, so that's okay. That's all right. That's not a bad thing. Very glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Thank Prob for having me and forcing you to be the interviewer. I thought that was pretty cool. I just want to do a quick shout out. I see some familiar names. Ricardo, hi, good to have you. And Ayo, we just spoke on Zoom yesterday, so really good to see him too. Thank you again.
All right. So, and I know, Ben, I have been to your awesome podcast show, Sensuous Sound of Infosec, and I know he does a lot more better than me. You got a chance, a lot of opportunities, and we've been there a couple of times. You got a chance to grill me. It's now my time now here. All
Why am
right.
I nervous the way you say that?
Well, we're gonna have make it like no holds barred, all the informal and casual thing. Okay. Well, okay. So we are gonna. I do have few questions for you, and today the topic for this session is about how exactly the shift in infosec that you've been here. Well, I know you have been into this industry for more than 2 decades now.
Making me
So I
feel
want.
old.
Oh
First
no.
you say I'm
Well,
obnoxious, now you say I'm old. I mean, you're just mean to me, Prashant. When you come on my show, I'm never this mean to you.
no, you have been really kind. I know you.
I'm just yanking your chain. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, okay. So so I know you don't need any introduction here, but still people would want to know how exactly you landed on security, the information security as a career that you've chosen now. I know you have a different background, so you just audience want to know more about how exactly what made you change your mind and you happen to be in the security.
That's very interesting. You know, it's something that I didn't specifically approach originally, and I think you and I have discussed this a little bit earlier, is that when I was a young person looking for my first civilian job, because I started in the military, um, we didn't have degrees in universities for IT security or information security. Security wasn't seen as its own academic discipline. We had very few certifications and and even fewer sources to help study for those certifications. Um, so I kind of came into this industry because I did have the military background. I did have some knowledge of physical security and what we called at the time OPSEC, or operational security, and I had to learn the IT components. The interesting thing is, if you really look at it organically, the practices that we put into place, the underlying philosophical elements of IT security, are the same elements that we'd use for physical security or personnel security or any other element. Defense in depth, continuous monitoring of your controls, no single points of failure. They're the same thing that we've used for thousands of years when we've been fighting thieves or defending against fire or whatever other physical elements we had, we've just transitioned those over to the IT world. So I kind of came into it because I was invited by somebody who I had known previously from the military. I studied, learned, and from there I just sort of springboarded from different position to different position and picked up new skills along the way.
Wow, must have been an exhilarating experience here, moving from the physical security and how it landed in your career in security as an information security, now being an instructor and a wonderful, amazing author. Wow. So it must have been a journey. Must you happen? Have you ever thought of putting down in the form of words for everybody to know exactly so that they can take at least some sort of an experience from that?
To like to explain to everyone how to go about getting a career and how to advance themselves.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, that's one way of putting into it. What I was thinking, I mean, at least it would definitely give them a shot into the security as a career. People who do not have a technical background, and although we're going to have more discussion on that uh, in our coming time. So, but definitely that's absolutely inspirational here. All right.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. I'm glad I could be an inspiration. It's also a little bit of craziness too. It's worth pointing out that I've never had children, I've never been married, and I've always been willing to change locations and pick up and move. So I've lived in many, many different places across many different distances and many different cultures. And for a lot of people, that's not very comfortable. They want to be near their family. They want to be in the same place. They want to put down roots. They want stability for their own children. So don't look at me necessarily as a template of exactly how you should approach your career. There are other good ways to go about building your career as well. It won't work for everybody. There's no one size fits all.
True, true, and that's one of the things that we always tell people when we actually go about saying preparation of the security certification. That every individual has a different journey. It's not like one pill for every kind of situation you want to give it. All right. Well, speaking of culture, you mentioned, and last time you were on the interview with Coach, and by the way, congratulations, that was a fantastic interview. And you mentioned there you have been a CISSP from last 21 years, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I have a 5-digit ISC squared member number. That's how old I am. I took the exam, if I remember correctly, I took the exam in late 2000, and I didn't get my results till the beginning of 2001 because we had to wait. It was a paper-based test. We had to
Paper
wait
based.
to get it scored and have them send you back in the mail. So it took me like 2 or 3 months to get my certification. It was brutal. It was 6 hours, 250 questions, all linear. It was none of the adaptive testing. And it sounds like that's what they're kind of going to do with the online testing right now, is they were
Right.
going back
Right.
to the linear model and the longer
Yep.
one.
Yep.
It's a hard test. It's really brutal. So
Right.
everybody be prepared because that's going to be a very long time. Um, yeah, good luck is what I can say to people, but it is doable. You can do it, and you probably won't take all 6 hours. It'll probably be more like 4, maybe 3.5, if you already have studied and you know what you're doing.
Right. And it does have a psychological influence when you sit on a 6 hours exam. It does give you, oh, well, chills in a various flavors. Trust me. I mean, when I got my CISSP, it was still 6 hours, 250 questions, and but it was more of a computer-based testing. But well, I found it
And
fun.
Ricardo is saying he did his in 2006, and it was 6 hours too. And more than a psychological barrier, it's a physical barrier. I mean,
Physical
it
test.
is an
Yeah,
endurance test as well.
true,
You know, just
true.
being anxious that whole time. and trying to stay focused, yeah, that's really difficult.
Absolutely. And it's a kind of a fun that I never want to have it in my life again.
That's why I keep paying for my maintenance fees and getting my CPE. I'm never going to
Right.
take that test again. I'm just never
True.
going to do it. So there were
True.
even years where I sort of I took a sabbatical and I wasn't working for like a year and a half. I still got my CPEs. I still did my self study because I did not ever want to have to take that test again.
Wow. Well, great. That's a great thing to hear. And and honestly, the 3 hours, the thing that we people now we have a 3 hours exam. I don't want to discredit anything. Personally, I don't want my test to be that it is restricting me from not going back and modifying something if I feel that there's a scope of modification. It could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, but I personally like my answers that I should be able to go back and review it. Well, people who have cleared the examination on the cat format, well, take a salute. You
Yeah,
do earn my
yeah,
respect.
I'm the exact same way. Even though it has been shown scientifically that if you change a previous answer, the odds are you are changing something that you got correct to something incorrect. I
True.
still like that
Very true.
opportunity. I still like
Yes.
having at least the knowledge to know I can go back if I have to.
True.
So I'm with you. Um, yeah, yeah, it's tough, and it kind of sounds like with the new online testing, they're going to make it linear, but you can't go backwards.
Can't go back. Yes, you can't go
Yeah,
back.
that's so weird. Yeah,
Right.
I don't know how or why they've gone that route.
Right.
Sam had a question about CCSP. Am I going to update the practice questions to include more scenario based? Um, I think I've got a good, healthy proportion of scenario based in there. A lot of Alice running Ostrich Incorporated. It's about 10%, I think, are paragraphs and study problems. I'm not going to do more than that, I don't think.
Well, I have a different scores to settle on that on your CCSP practice question. Man, you
Uh-oh.
almost made me worry on that. I literally felt I am not gonna get through this exam.
Because the
And
questions were harder than what was on the exam? Is that the issue?
well, I can't say my exam was easy either, but like both of them has grilled me to an extent. I literally felt that I failed my CCSP, and I find myself really fortunate that, and trust me, those are the fun things. I don't want to do it again in my life. Like I
I,
said.
Same thing happened to me halfway through the CCSP. I was convinced I had gotten 5 questions in a row wrong. I just knew they were wrong. And I stood up and I left the testing center and I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face and said, okay, if you fail this, so what? You still have your CISSP, you know? And yeah, I know that feeling. It is brutal.
True, true. And very well said by Ricardo here that CCSP is much more difficult than actual CISSP, and I feel the same way. Well, when I did my CISSP, I was like, I did it like in 3 hours, and it was 250 questions. And well, for CCSP, it was 125 question. It took me 3 hours and 15 minutes when it
Yeah.
was 4 hours of exam.
Yep.
So it's kind of a nightmare. And okay, and well, 21 years, and you have got an opportunity to mentor a lot of people, and you have got an opportunity to work with various organizations as a teacher, as a mentor. What's the difference do you see in the industry, because you do get a chance to speak to a lot of people? So what's the difference that you see from last almost 2 decades in terms of
How
what's
has it
the
evolved?
how it has evolved, and how exactly it is shifting shift towards an industry? People are recognizing these certifications, these skills, and as a technology, what do you think? What's your opinion on that?
That's a great question. And mine's going to be purely an anecdotal response, just from what
We
I've
love
seen.
that.
That's
We love
okay. So what I've seen is a massive growth in industries claim to appreciate security. They've created things like the CISO position, which didn't exist even 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It wasn't broadly part of the board of directors or the executive suite. Organizations are terrified right now of breaches and the regulatory punishments that come with breaches. So they're pretending to think security is important. And they've increased our budget. They treat us with a little more deference and respect. We're no longer the team that crawls under tables dragging fiber optic cable everywhere. We're the ones that they actually consult with before they go and do a new business function. They want to know what are the risks to security and privacy and compliance. So in that regard, I think we've come a long way as an industry. We've seen a lot of laws and regulations, regardless of the fact most of them are garbage. We've seen a lot of laws and regulations that have given more teeth to the government to hammer companies that fail in security. Therefore, those companies are now scared and they are relying more on security personnel, and they're willing to pay better salaries. They're prepared to have better budgets, and they're buying more gear. With all that said, can I also mention the similarities to 20 years ago?
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The same thing's still happening. The heads of the business want to get something done. They want to do some sort of profitable activity. And they dislike the fact that the security office is saying, well, if you do that, there's going to be risk involved, or here's how it could go bad. So there's always that antagonism between productivity and security. We're still fighting with each other, and that's good. That should be in there. There should be some friction. The other issue that I'm seeing is so many of us in the security industry, we are the experts in our field. We don't really understand the business that we're trying to support, whether we're working at a bank or a manufacturing entity or an entertainment provider. We don't understand the ins and outs of what the business is selling. We just understand security. That's not a good position to be in. We have to understand what our business does so we can support it with reasonable amounts of controls in order to reduce risk without inhibiting productivity and profit. So that's a problem. That's an issue. I also see, there's a lot of complaint in our industry right now from managers that there's not enough security professionals out there. We just can't find good security people. Am I allowed to curse on your show? I don't want to offend
Oh
anybody. Is
yeah.
that
Like I
okay?
said, no holds barred.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I think that's bullshit. I think there's plenty of security people out there. There's a lot of good security people out there. What companies aren't willing to do is pay them. And I think you and I have talked about this, and we talked about it on Tu's show the other day. Um, you're seeing these job postings that say entry level security analyst, must have CISSP, CCSP, 10 years of experience, sans GSEC, and knowledge of routers, software development, agile. It's like, what? Who is that? That's not an entry level position. And if you're only offering entry level pay for that job posting, and you're expecting somebody who has all those magical skills and talents, you of course you can't find anybody, because that person doesn't exist except in a Lord of the Rings. That's not a thing. That's a fantasy land. So
True.
a lot has changed over 20 years, but a lot is the same.
So so the requirements that most of the organizations they put in, first of all, they do not understand what exactly they need.
Correct.
It's absolutely obnoxious to, and it's an unrealistic demand they ask. I mean, I've been looking at, and there are various memes out there for a kind of a technology. They want 12 years of experience on that, and that technology has been there for the last
It's been
six
for
years.
six. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, right. So people are crazy about that. So
Uh-huh.
so what I took away from this is learn about the business, learn about the domain that you're working on, and give a pat on your back, all of you, because you are actually a part of the group which is needed by the industry. You all are, well, we don't realize the kind of a significant role that we play each and every day in the lives of our industries, in our own life, because the the realistic war is a gone story. It's the kind of a people, like elite professional, like everyone in the group who is right now, and those who are going to be listening to this recording. It is actually a great job that you guys have been doing, and it they deserve a kind of an applause to everyone.
Yeah, keep it up.
Keep
Absolutely.
it up. Yeah, and one thing, never give up. Do not listen to
Never give
anyone
up.
what they
Never
say. Never
surrender.
give up. Never surrender. That's a military.
Galaxy Quest. AO had a question. Is the book on CCSP enough material for CCSK? No. No single book is any good for any certification. Make sure you use multiple sources. And especially for CCSK, I recommend the CSA Security Guidance V4. And V5 will be coming out later this year. Make sure you go read that. It's free and you can download that. Also, I just wrote another new book called the CCSK Practice Tests. And you can find that on Amazon. So if you want that, go get that too.
Awesome. Well, I do hope those questions are not as killing as you had on your CCS book. CSS. I'm gonna mention it a lot. I have some scores to settle with you.
I apologize. I didn't mean to scare you with those. I
No,
tried
but
to
thank
make
you.
them as realistic as
It
possible.
actually helped me. It actually helped me in making adding one more accolade to my career. It did help me. Thank you so much. I am actually, uh, how should I put it? Like, I owe you. I owe you, really.
You wrote the Cirrus. You should have been able to pass those questions without any problem.
Well, it was
So,
because of the kind of a hard work that I had to put in, because of the questions that you wrote were amazing.
Prashant, Sam's asking about CCSP for Dummies. I've never read it. Have you?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
No.
I just relied on two
Sorry,
books.
Sam.
So one with the CBK written by Adam Garden, and one with the official study guide by Ben, and that's all. And I used CSA V4 as well.
Yeah.
So those
And
were all
and
the study tools
Ricardo
that I
and
used.
Ricardo recommends the Cloud Controls Matrix 4.0, which just came out last week. And I agree
Right.
with that too. And that's for free download as well. Both of
True.
those things are testable on the CCSK.
Right. Okay. Well, speaking of certifications, and this is a question that I normally get most of the times, and it's a debatable topic, and I do want to hear it from you, what you think about certification versus skill. It's a common question that normally I end up uh, giving up a point, but yes, I want to know what you think and what you want to tell people about it. Certification versus skill.
Yeah, and I think two asked a similar question, certification versus college degree.
College
You know,
degree, yes.
which should you as the practitioner focus on to better your career? And I'll answer both things. Certification versus skill. I have very little skill. If you were to sit me down in front of a router and say configure this securely, I would have no idea what I was looking at. I've been so far away from the tech for like you said, 20 years. You know, I wouldn't know where to begin. Well, that's not true. I'd go to YouTube and I'd find somebody else who did it and I'd follow along with their steps. And I think that's what a lot of us do in this industry is we understand what resources are at our disposal. We use good suggestions and we capitalize on those, and that's great. Um, but what I'm saying is, in terms of inherent skill, I can't write a line of code. I can't, set up a web server. My skill is in delivering content, whether written or spoken. And that is a skill that has value because not everybody in our industry has it. And hopefully I'm as good as some of the other instructors so that the value I do bring to the table gives value to the audiences I'm communicating with. And I had to find that. I had to search to determine who needed that and how I could deliver it. I don't know if there's a certification for trainers that says this person is a good trainer and here's his gold star. That means he's an expert trainer. I don't think there is any such thing. So in terms of certifications in my particular sub aspect, they don't even exist. So I have to constantly compete with other people offering the same product and somehow differentiate myself. Certifications are great for those who are good at passing multiple choice tests. Certification is a good way to validate and verify that you have a certain level of skill, and that's what it's supposed to be for. It's supposed to say, I have these basic concepts and philosophy, I can do these things, I have this knowledge, this fundamental knowledge. That's okay, but there's plenty of people out there who do have the knowledge who can't pass the test for any number of reasons. Test anxiety, they're not good at multiple choice tests, the language barrier. These, and I'll come out and say it, these fucking tests are so tilted towards English speakers, native English speakers. It's really, really, really unfair. And hopefully we're broadening that. Hopefully that's being addressed. For instance, we're seeing a lot more non-Americans being elected to the ISC squared board of directors. So I think that's going to change things significantly. Um, and I've tried to imagine how we could improve the certification process. Should we go with the model of doing oral boards where you're being interviewed by a panel of CISSPs and therefore you have to speak your responses instead of picking A through D? Should we do a practical where we sit you down in front of a network and say, defend this network, you know? And there's a bunch of different ways it could be done. And at the end of the day, the best that my mind could come up with is multiple choice tests suck, but right now they are the most objective, they are the most fair and universally accessible. Everything else would have too much inherent personality bias and too much subjectivity, and it's always going to be unfair. Multiple choice tests are the least unfair approach. So that's where I come at with certification versus skill. Plenty of people can get certified who don't have the skill set, and that kind of brings down the value slightly. But for the rest of the people who have the skill and can get the certification, it's of value to them and the rest of us too, especially for employers. Then the other question, certifications versus college degrees. Right now, I'd say go certifications. And I'm biased, of course, but I have been a college professor before. College degrees have just become so expensive and cost prohibitive and involve so much useless crap that is just not going to help you either in the practice of your job or in advancing your career. Go get the certs while you're getting experience and continue to work on your college degree part-time. And do that, you know, make sure you're finishing your degree in your mid 20s or something like that, but don't take 4 years out of your life to go to school and only do school. Spread it out, get the experience, which is more important, and pick up a cert or two along the way.
Great insight. And now I feel bad. I don't know what kind of a value I am adding being spending 4 years in a college technical degree. But indeed,
I'm not saying they're all completely worth it. You know exactly what I meant.
no, I know, and it's a great valuable feedback. And you kind of like it resounded the same thought that one of the greatest entrepreneurs and the the person Elon Musk, he
Elon
also
Musk
believed into
says
this.
college
Yeah,
is bullshit. I'll pay you 100
right.
grand not to go to college.
True, true.
Yeah, I
So
thought that was wonderful.
that's a kind of a profound thought that it resonated really well when you just mentioned. So I agree. So the kind of things that you learn during your own the practical experience and obtaining certifications, it does teaches you well. I mean, I always recommend, doesn't matter you go ahead and appear for CISSP or CCSP or not, but at least start reading the book. You'll gain a plenty of enormous knowledge that you can certainly use it uh, in order to at least speak what's happening, what others are talking in terms of security. and it is going to help you a lot, at least in cracking through the interviews. Now, so
And there
again,
are some books that are better than others. Daniel Carter's book, Mike Chappell's book. Um, some of them are a lot more approachable in terms of how they deliver the material. Some are more academic and more like reference books. So it depends on what you're going for, but yeah, definitely pick it up and start broadening your horizons.
true, true, agreed. And well, speaking of the college, so people who have, and this is a kind of a two-part question here. So people who have just came out of the college, and security does really sound fascinating to them, and they want to have a career. And because, and I remember Coach also mentioned this, that, and in fact you also agree to that, that security doesn't look at all the way they showcase in the movies, a guy sitting at the basement and trying to walk into the multiple disco lights. It doesn't look like it all. It just looks like people like you and I. You can see us. We are the security professionals. That this is how we look. So, uh, people who are about to get into the industry, they want to get their themselves a job. How do you want to suggest they take their career? I mean, should they start their career by lining up on a job of a security, or they can go ahead and do a certification that can help them land into the job of, of a security? So that's the first
My
part of the question.
my answer is always going to be work. Get the work experience, whatever that experience is, whether that's networking, whether that's help desk, tech support, right? Any entry level job you can get in there, even if it's just tangentially related to information security or computers or IT or whatever just get in there. And the opening the door through work is going to be a lot better than opening a door through a degree. And you can always self-study for your certification. You can always self-study for college and advance yourself while you're not working on your nights and on your weekends. But if you go to school full time, you're separating and distancing yourself from the employers, and you're putting yourself behind your peers who you are competing with, while they're acquiring and getting more experience. So yeah, definitely jump in, start work, volunteer work if you have to. Go find a nonprofit in your area, go find a charity in your area who needs help doing their wireless networking. Set it up for them, learn how, and be their admin. Do the work and the rest will follow.
Agreed. And indeed, a great thought. Do not let something to happen. You need to jumpstart and make things happen accordingly. That's how things. And automatically, once you have landed into some kind of a job, I am pretty sure things will start falling in place eventually. It
If
might
you
not
have any
happen.
degree of competency, if you have any degree of
Right.
capability, if you can get along with human beings, whoever's hired you is going to utilize you as much as they can. They're going to exploit you out of their own benefit. So they're going to have to
True.
promote you, or you can find elsewhere to go once you've demonstrated that capacity. Just keep going and keep working.
I agree.
What's Jake's question? In the real world, hardly have skills in areas outside my experience. Security tools. How do you go building those skills? Oh, that's a really good question. Well, like I said, Jay, go find somebody who needs help where you can volunteer that work, and you can learn those skills on the fly. You can build that experience, or start with your home network. An AWS account is what, $1 a month? Invest that in yourself and start building a whole network of VMs and tear it apart and bang away at it and see how you can break it. Uh, you have all the tools at your disposal. Go make the most of them.
Agreed. Agreed. And and speaking of that, uh, well, this was for the people who just came out of the college. Now there are people who are into the industry for almost a decade or more than that. But now, because they see security as one of the most fascinating jobs, they want to switch their careers. They were either uh, part of the development team or the part of the project management or something else. Now they want to do the security thing. Now they do have an industry knowledge, they do have a business knowledge, but they might not understand how exactly security works. So for them, what's your take on that? How exactly they should go ahead?
I think everyone who has 10 years of experience in whatever field is in a great position to come into security. I want those people. I don't see them as competitors. I don't see them as poaching our jobs. I see them as augmenting what we have to offer. Somebody who has 10 years in management experience is going to be great in IT security because most of us don't want to be managers. We want to be on the front lines playing with the thing and trying to fight the bad guys, right? If you have management skills and you can come in and manage a team, wonderful, please do that for us. If you come out of the development world, you can be a great advocate for including security in the development process. We always say it would be great if security was baked in instead of bolted on to the product, right? Well, if you've been in the development side, you know where the problems are. You know where security has to be injected into that process. Um, how do you get into that position? How do you get into that role? Apply for jobs, advocate for yourself, do a lot of networking, go do public speaking, publish on every outlet that you can write your name on. Get yourself out there, go make those connections, say what it is you want. Otherwise, people aren't going to be able to guess what's in your head. They're not going to come knock on your door or send you an email even though they've never heard of you. So get out there, meet people, and apply for those positions.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And it's indeed a great thought that we do need people. And I remember you talking it on the coach's interview that anyone who wants to be in a security doesn't necessarily have to be get a security background. Anyone can go be a good security professional. They just need to have a great logical thinking and a way of a perspective of looking at things, and they can be a terrific security professionals.
Purely anecdotally, some of the people that I've seen who do really well on the CISSP and CCSP and CISM and all the other certs are auditors and accountants and lawyers because they have a way of looking at a question. They have a mindset of looking for a proper answer. Whereas us, IT nerds, we look at a question, we go, but what if it was on Wednesday and it was on our Linux and it was, we pick the part of question, and we drive it to death, which is completely the wrong way to go about answering a question, right? So yes, there are great mentalities from other segments of the business that can really enhance the security office so we don't all end up thinking in the same way. Um, Sam had a question, is ISC squared working on improving quality of the questions? No. ISC squared questions are never going to improve because they're written by committee, meaning us, you. You as an ISC squared member can write test questions, but then those questions are massaged by a whole team of people who have to make the question fit and conform the ISC squared template. There are always going to be horrible questions. They're always going to be much harder than what you see in the practice tests.
Well, again, I find myself really lucky here. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me that I've been through that. I'm never gonna be there. All right. Well, uh, a great thought on way of answering the questions. Now, you have been into the like IC Square instructor for more than 5 years now, and you have been into various security trainings, and you have taught multiple people. And so, what is one thing let's talk about CSSP and CCSP. These are the closest ones to me. So, as a security trainer, as an instructor, on the very first day of the training, that when you arrive on the class, what is one thing, the very first thing that you want to tell all your students, that this is a kind of an understanding level you have to limit yourself. You do not have to go beyond this. You do not have to keep it above this. This is where you have to limit yourself, and this is a kind of an understanding. You do not so we normally say that it is an inch deep and mile wide. Well,
Yes.
what is the understanding of inch deep? And I'm pretty sure that it will be really helpful for the aspirants here.
Okay, so that's a really good question. And I'll give you like four answers, right? Four things that I think should be universal for test takers. One is health and human safety is paramount. So if you see a question about anything, a device, a process, a policy, and one of the answers is health and human safety, pick that answer, move on, because that's always going to be the right answer. That will, health and human safety is more important than value. Health and human safety is more important than risk. It's always the most important. Um, Second thing, like what you were saying, I could dive into the weeds of the OSI 7-layer model and learn every little thing about datagrams and UDP and port number. The test in general is not going to do that. The test is going to say, do you know the names of the 7 layers? Do you know them in order? The test is going to say, do you know which protocol exists at which layer? And that's pretty much it. You might get one or two questions where they blow you out of the water with some really obscure reference to some flag and some protocol, and you're never going to know. And you can never know all that stuff. I mean, it's just too much. So be prepared to miss a certain number of questions and move on. Don't freak out. Don't spend 20 minutes trying to figure out some answer that you just don't know. Your studying isn't going to scale to learn that level of granularity. If you spend 3 hours studying TCP/IP flags in a message, you might see one question on a 250 question exam. That's not worth it. It doesn't make sense. So don't focus that way. Focus instead on the high level general topics. The third thing that I would say is test taking skill is a hell of a lot more important than knowledge of the CISSP CBK. I love what you wrote in both Memory Palace and Cirrus. You said get to sleep the night before and make sure it's good sleep and long sleep. Make sure you know how to get to the testing center with plenty of time so you're not running in at 2 minutes before your test starts and you're freaking out. Make sure you take breaks, reset your brain, understand that yes, there's anxiety and there's frustration, but don't panic because panic is the thing that'll kill you more than the actual questions themselves. So all of that, the test taking skill is more important. And then finally, the last thing I would say is um, don't read something that isn't there. And this is kind of what I was referring to a little bit earlier in terms of technologists. We tend to look for the exception to a rule and think about the what ifs and maybes. Don't do that to yourself. Read what the question says, figure out what it's asking, pick the one answer out of the four that that question is asking, and move on. Understand that that question could be asking the most best or least worst answer because A, B, C, or D, there might be two or three that are true in there, and you have to pick the one that is correct. So that's a little tough.
Wow. And absolutely a great point here. There's always, I mean, I as a person who speaks to CISSP aspirants, I normally suggest them to think critically but do not overthink. There's a difference between thinking critically and overanalyzing it,
Yep.
because when you tend to overanalyze, you try to think from a technical perspective, and in a technical, you have an answer either 1 or 0. You have a binary option, and a CISSP is a way lot gray area in between 1 and 0, and we have to find that. So
It's a
it's
managerial test. It is not a
managerial test,
mathematical test.
right?
Yep.
And it's a kind of a we tend to miss out these key valuable points, and we try to assume things which even being asked there,
Yep.
and then we end up missing the context. So again, a wonderful thought, and people who have plan their exams in future, take these key pointers. It will be certainly helpful. because these are the kind of a things which no one talks about. People talks about everything which make them sound really intelligent, but I'm not very sure if that would be useful or not.
I don't think
So
so.
these are the these are the basic things which normally people should be talking about. And wonderful, thank you. That was really helpful. Well, one last thing I would ask, and then I'll keep the floor open for. And I have way more questions that I kept in my mind, but I think
Let's do this again
we
next
won't.
month.
Oh yes, definitely, we
Okay.
have to do it.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm going to miss out on the fantastic questions that I wrote down.
Okay.
So,
I know
so
you were all prepared to ambush me with some. I thought like you dug up into my past history and you found like an arrest report of something about me. I was looking forward to that. It's like, yeah, bring it on.
okay, so sensuous sound of infosec. Well, that is a podcast that you and Robin host. And what what was the idea behind this podcast series? And because I have never seen a lot of people giving away this beautiful way of conveying the messages, stories, anecdotes, media review, all which is related to information security. Whose idea
So,
was it?
so it was Robin's idea.
Well,
Last
I knew about
year,
that.
last year, there was this disease. I forget the name of it. It came out and people started freaking. Oh yeah, COVID.
COVID.
And
Oh, yeah.
so we were locked in at home together. And Robin had to change jobs because pretty much the industry that she was in just tanked. And she was considering different types of jobs. And one of the things that she was like is, well, she looked at me and she said, "You don't work too hard. Your job looks pretty easy. I bet I could do your job." And I said, "Yeah, you're probably right. You probably could." And she said, "Okay, I'm going to figure out how to start my certification pathway and get into it." And she started looking at Fundamentals Plus from CompTIA. And she said, there's a lot of people out there presenting a lot of these topics, but when I ask you a question, you seem to explain it to me in a way I can understand. Why don't we make this a podcast? Because the explanations in our discussion of these things might help other people while they're studying for their certifications as well. And so we were kind of bored and we had some time on our hands. And she got us some Blue Yeti microphones. And we started almost a year ago, it was March of last year. We're at 48 episodes and we're really having a blast. It entertained us, so we kept doing it. And it's a lot of fun and we just have a blast. And we thank you for being on our show 3 times. You've been our most popular, most recurring guest so far. And that's
Thank you.
awesome.
It's always fun to be there. And for those who are watching us right now live, it's a awesome podcast that I would recommend everybody's. You should go and hear it. It's available on all the streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, everywhere. It's available there. And Ben also have mentioned the link of the podcast earlier, and you should go and watch it, listen to it, and it's terrific, terrific.
Thank you,
Okay,
Prashant. I really appreciate that. We have so much fun with it.
absolutely. Well, I think we do not have much of the time left, but for those who want to ask questions, the man is all yours. And you can ask any question if you want to talk to him. If you want, if you're kind of a shy person, if you want to post questions, I'll take that questions on your behalf. Or if you want, you can
Oh,
just unfeel.
Sam asked this earlier and I didn't answer. If there's more than one correct answer, how do you pick the best one, A, B, C, or D? Sam, you're not going to like my response, but here's how you go about it. First, there's usually one you can throw away. One is just not right. So you're left with 3 of them. Of those 3, there's one you can pretty much try to eliminate because it doesn't fit somehow. And you can drill down to 2 potential answers. Flip a mental coin, pick one of them, and move on. If you don't know the answer right away, if you can't answer it directly, trying to beat your head against the wall is not going to help. It's just going to slow down your responses. Move on and answer the ones you can answer.
Wonderful. See, that wasn't that difficult. And I know it does takes up a nerve to be there on the examination room, but yes, that's the simplest way of doing it. All right. Any questions? You're gonna ask questions to the Ben Maliso live. If you want to take this opportunity, he's here, and feel free to ask any questions. And if you're shy, you can ping your questions. I'm gonna ask on your behalf.
When's my next CCSP class? I think it's mid-February, but I think it's a private class. Unfortunately, I have to schedule all my CISSP and CCSP classes through ISC squared. So they just kind of tell me a few weeks before I'm teaching, hey, would you like to teach this class? And I say, okay, sure. Um, I think that's a private customer though on that class, so it's not open to the public. I don't know after that when I'll have my next one. Hopefully in March. Hopefully they'll schedule me for something. Sam, if you want to give me your email address, send it to me here in the private chat, or you can email me. When I find out my next public class, I will reach out to you and let you know in case you want to join in.
All right, fantastic.
And that goes for everybody, not just Sam. There's no special relationship between me and Sam.
All right. Okay, any more questions for Ben? No? Okay, well, I have one more last question for you.
Okay.
Although I have many more, but I'm gonna restrict myself looking at the time. And so I did notice that you have plenty of books that you've authored related to security, not related to security. One thing that intrigued me, that was 100 things you need to do before you die, something that sort of.
1001 Things to Do If You Dare, which was a direct ripoff of that guy's book, 101 Things to Do Before You Die. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I was very, very young at that time. The publisher was a former boss of mine, had been an editor of mine when I worked at a newspaper as a journalist. And she approached me and she said, we're looking to publish a title that is very similar to this other title. Can you crank something out in 4 months? And I said, sure, of course I can. That was hard. The first 300 are easy, and then it gets really painful after that. But it was my first book. I was very proud to have done it. It's very fun to hold a book in your hand that got published by a publisher. Um, yeah, that was that
Right.
was a hoot. And I have a
Okay.
whole bunch of copies still left on the shelf behind me. So if
Oh
anybody
wow.
wants them, yeah, right. I bought all the rest of them after they stopped being published.
Okay, I have a question from Aman here. So, textbook knowledge versus instructor-led training, which one is good? What
Depends
do
how
you
you
reckon?
learn. Depends how you learn. Some people going to listen to an instructor speak is a waste of their time. They could do better self-study reading a book. Other people can't open a book and see the data on the page. They have to hear it from being in a class with an instructor. Find out what has worked for you and do that. And that might be watching a video, it might be listening to audio. I don't like this educational approach that says some people are audio learners, some people are visual learners. I don't think that's always true. I think each of us has a capacity for each of those things, and depending what the topic is, we may approach it better, whether it's audio, visual, data, text, what have you. Figure out what works for you and go do that. And then spend the money on that too. Buy the best book, pay for the most expensive course, buy the best instructors, that sort of thing. Like Ricardo, he's a good instructor. If someone has CISM, does it make sense to get CISSP? It depends what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. If it's just to get a job that has like a certain requirement for it, the two should be equivalent according to most regulations, like US military regulations. CISM should satisfy whatever you need CISSP for. But if it's a specific position that says we need you to be CISSP, that might be a requirement of the customer. Go and do that, but do it on their dime. What has helped you to be an effective writer and speaker? Writing and speaking. Ao, it's one of those things like flexing a muscle. The more you do it, the better you'll be at it. Um, oh, okay. Is that the end of the questions? Cool.
Right. Well, I don't know how to thank you for being here today with us, and I was delighted and excited to like interact, and we have spoken several times on your podcast, and we do reach out through emails and everywhere, and well, it has been an amazing session, and I'm pretty sure people have loved it, and they have got a chance to interact with you in person, and i'm I'm absolutely sure that people are going to ask for more in future, so they're
Let's
gonna
do this. Let's do this
let's
monthly, and then you come on my show, and we'll exploit each other, and it'll be wonderful.
wow, amazing, amazing.
Yes,
And
and I play around on the subreddits as well for CCSP, CISSP, and CCSK. Thank you, Sam.
right, wonderful, great. Well, those who have been with us tonight, and thank you so much for taking out time. You have been a great audience, and Ben, I cannot thank you enough. You've been a great sport. You just simply said yes. You've been really kind to me for being here to the show on the show, and I'm looking forward for another similar kind of event, and we're gonna rock.
Wonderful. Thank you, Prashant. You did a great job. Is this the first time you've ever hosted?
Yes,
Well,
and
nobody could
it's
tell. We were all
it's
impressed. You sound like a radio DJ. You are fantastic.
well, it's
Outstanding.
this is my second
Sam
first,
says you look nervous.
and I know, and I've admitted. And yesterday, Ben and I were on the call for the testing, and I admitted it very bluntly that I'm gonna be nervous because it's a kind of a big fan moment. I've actually looked Ben as my mentor, as a good friend, and it's a
If you
great chance and
weren't
opportunity.
nervous, that would mean you weren't taking it seriously, and that wouldn't be good. So you did a
Right.
fantastic job. We all owe you a
Thank you.
round of applause. Thanks
Thank you.
everyone for coming and everyone who asked questions. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I wish you all a great, well, good night and a happy weekend. And thank you, Ben. I'm going to speak to you soon. I'm going to look forward for more such conversation. And it's absolutely fun. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye bye.